papers. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Gemma Forte and by Emma Wolfe, both broadcasters and authors. Emma Wolfe, Gemma Forte, thank you so much for being with us this morning, and I hope you're having a lovely start to your Sunday. All right, let's start off with you, Gemma. You've picked out the front page of the Sunday Times. Goodness, where to even begin with this? The Sunday Times say that there are now calls to rid Commons of cosy culture of debauchery. Debauchery
indeed, and it is pretty scandalous when you look at how much is going on within Parliament. When you look at the fact that there are currently 56 members of Parliament who are under investigation for sexual misconduct. I mean, that is absolutely shocking. I mean, the Tories have just put through legislation to ensure that people bring voter ID to vote in order to get rid of sort of election fraud. Well, only 9 people out of the population of the UK did that last time. 56 MPs under investigation for sexual misconduct. On top of that, of course, we've got the story that's been dominating with Neil Parish, who has resigned for looking at porn at work in the Commons with other women around, which was terrible. So Lindsay Hoyle and Andrea Leadsom are the two who are tasking themselves with really cleaning up everybody's act, but they've got their work cut out because it's a drinking culture as well. Not just that, we've had accusations of bullying, of course. Priti Patel was found to have bullied. Nothing happened. John Bercow was found to have been a terrible bully as well. But we've also had MPs who found to be guilty of child assault, lying under oath. So really something needs to happen. These people who are setting our laws, and I think normal adults know how to behave at work, and there are only exceptions ever who don't, and whereas here it seems to be a real culture. And it brings up other questions such as, should there be a quota for perhaps having more female MPs? Yep. In Parliament, should they have a written law so they really understand what those standards should be? But also, does a fish rot from the head as well? Because underlying this, perhaps the fact that you've got also 18 parties being investigated during lockdown, perhaps this culture, I'm not saying individuals shouldn't be accountable, but this general culture is pervasive at the moment. It really seems to be particularly strong under Boris Johnson.
All right, Emma, come in on some of that. And we're going to come on to that idea of quotas, because I know that's the story you've picked out on the front page of the Telegraph, but just pick up a little bit on what the Times are talking about with this debauchery. And Gemma mentioned a bit of it there, and I've been speaking to politicians for the past week about this, about the drinking culture. Now, I find it astounding. I was called a bit of a killjoy that they're allowed to drink and go to work. It is amazing that these guys can drink and then go and do their actual jobs a little drunk.
Their actual jobs. These are actual grown-ups who are voting, and they're not just doing jobs, Kamali, they're voting on important government motions. They are making decisions about the legislation of our country. They are paid by the taxpayer. It really is shocking. It's not an excuse that they work long hours, they're away from their families, they're in London during the week. Some of them are younger because of the intake in 2019. You know, it's a hard drinking culture and they work late hours. This is not an excuse. And I think that all of this is everything that's coming out. I mean, we've seen sleaze for years, but everything that's coming out is just, well, it's embarrassing, it's shameful. And frankly, what's really shocking for me is that this is against the backdrop of 2 major crises. Domestic crisis, the cost of living, people genuinely wondering whether they can eat and heat their homes, and an international crisis with the invasion of Ukraine. And meanwhile, we have government ministers, we have MPs groping, being accused of sexual harassment, drinking, falling over blind drunk, and all sorts of shenanigans in Westminster, resigning over porn. You know, the whole thing is just, it's a real embarrassment. If I was in Westminster right now, I would feel embarrassed.
Yeah, it's really shameful, it is. Let's move on to your front page of the Sunday Telegraph, not your front page, but the story you've picked out on the front page. And this picks up a little bit on what Gemma was mentioning there. This is Oliver Dowden, chairman of the Conservative Party, saying that they're going to make sure that half of their MPs will be women. Thoughts on that, then?
Yeah, so the headline is half of our MPs will be women, but actually in the body of the article he says half of our MPs must be women. And for Oliver Dowden, who, as you say, is the Tory party chairman, this is the key to tackling the sleaze, is having increased female representation. So he wants up to 50% to reflect the population, which is around 50% female. all well and good, Kamali, but frankly, the key to tackling sleaze is MPs not being sleazy. Do you remember when they used to talk about, the key to tackling sort of abuse or, the threatening behaviour towards women was women not dressing sexily or women not being provocative? It feels a little bit like that. The key to bad male, and it is mostly, I'm afraid, male behaviour, is men not being sleazy, men not harassing their staff or drinking to excess so that they're completely out of control or watching porn in the chamber. That is the key. Increasing female representation within politics is a fantastic thing, and of course it's important, but I don't think the two should be linked right now. I don't think that the sleaze scandal should be linked to increasing female MPs.
No, absolutely not. Perhaps it does feel a little bit tinkering around the edges, but definitely there needs to be more women in Parliament. I mean, that's just a given anyway. All right, let's keep moving on, Jen. We're not going to get you to come in on that because I think you probably know what you would say about it anyway. But let's go to the inside page of The Observer, a story you've picked out here. And this is all about the number of people who died in care homes as a result of COVID. And another suggestion, that there may have been some poorly chosen words by the Prime Minister when talking about this.
Oh yes, and this is where words are so important. And Boris Johnson says what he needs to say at the time. He has got form for this, and he has lied and often not changed the record to show that when he's been asked to do so. But eventually what you say, if it doesn't tally with what you've said before or what's actually happened, it will catch up with you. He's still in office, so it hasn't so far. But this is going to really upset and enrage people, because he came out and he's been accused of misleading Parliament again, and the High Court have ruled that the government acted unlawfully by sending patients from hospital into care homes, which resulted in thousands of deaths of the most vulnerable people in society. And of course, anybody who lost somebody in that way is not going to simply move on. So the fact of the matter is, what Boris Johnson said is that he wasn't aware that people who had COVID could have it asymptomatically. But unfortunately, that isn't true. He is on record as saying, and I quote, "A study I saw was saying as many as 50% of people may have had it asymptomatically." And he said that on the 25th of March 2020. So when he now says, "I didn't know," that is factually incorrect. That is a huge issue when you are talking about death, when you're talking about people who died, and it's simply unfair on the relatives. And I think that's why it sticks in the craw sometimes as well when he says, "We got all the big calls right." He certainly got some of the big calls right. He absolutely did not get all the big calls right. And I think that honesty is required, accountability and truth.
Absolutely right. I mean, I think that's a story that's definitely going to rumble on, but with so much going on, it feels a little bit like it's being overlooked in some instances. I want to keep us moving, if we can, Gemma and Emma, and move on to a story that you've picked out, Emma, in the inside pages of the Mail on Sunday. Let's bring up the story there for our viewers. Revealed, they say, the source of that Basic Instinct story from last week was ... Angela Rayner. Now, they say that they've spoken to Tory MPs who've told them that this is who actually revealed the story. Of course, it came from Tory party anyway, but just another development in this incredible moment in political reporting.
Absolutely, and I'm going to be very careful what I say, because the Mail got into hot water over this last week, and I don't want to get into hot water as well. So the Mail got into hot water because they were claiming that a Tory MP had compared Angela Rayner to Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct and had been crossing and uncrossing her legs in a seductive manner in order to distract the Prime Minister at the dispatch box. According to a Tory party investigation, I think that's quite important, the Mail are now reporting that it's Angela Rayner herself who is the source of this story. So apparently on one evening on the delightful Commons terrace, she was saying she liked to cross and uncross her legs and give him a flash of and I'm not going to say the next bit, Kamali, because it's Sky News and it's early on a Sunday morning, but you get the picture. So was this really sexism and misogyny and smears from the Tory party about the Labour deputy leader, or was it a light-hearted comment from the lady herself? You decide.
Well, I'm sure Sophie is speaking to Keir Starmer later on at about 8:30, so I'm sure that she will try and put that to him. Just an incredible further development. Gemma, Emma, thank you for now. Back with us later in the morning, but plenty more, of course, to come here on Sky News Breakfast and coming up in the next hour, as there are urgent calls for reform in Parliament following a series of scandals involving MPs. We'll be speaking to a former chairman of the Committee for Standards in Public Life. Stay with us for that.